Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody. Like Jackie said, we know some people are in DC at the Anchor conference, and OACB has their EDP going on today and tomorrow. So we knew it was going to be a lighter crowd. But welcome and thanks for being here. I am supposed to give just a brief update about the retention payments, which I don't have a lot of new, well, actually I have nothing new to update you on, but will say that, at the department, we're ready to move forward, whether that be in a bill next month or, through whatever, or through controlling board or whatever means they choose for us to do. So we are planning still on the retention payments. They will hopefully still be, not hopefully, they will still be retroactive, and we're just trying to figure out how best to get those out to everyone. So nothing new to report. We're still waiting to hear on how best to do that. So.
Kim, can you clarify retroactive to when? Just for the notes.
It's to July 1. Is that right? Jeremiah, what date? I saw you unmute yourself.
July 1.
Okay. Oh, good. I was right.
Based on April through June data.
Correct. Nathan or Nate?
Oh, I just have a quick point of clarification. So this is the 6.5% that was previously announced, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a drafted rule in over being reviewed. We have some language drafted for a bill that we've shared with the association. So we've got everything rolling. We just need to get some approvals in place so we can get the funding out. And this is the money that the county boards of developmental disabilities are funding. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Kim. I do just want to remind folks that we are a public meeting. So if we have some guests who arrive, our practice is that we welcome you to listen, but not to actively participate. And the meeting is being recorded. So back to the agenda. Next up, Kristen was going to tell us a little bit about a toolkit that she's been working on with some of her partners.
Hi, everyone. So yes, this is a toolkit that maybe at first glance isn't directly on point with workforce, but it really actually comes out of this group's discussions and some follow-up discussions that have come from that. And the topic that we are trying to address, and this is APSE working with the County Board Association and OPRA, is some of the decisions that we make as guardians at APSE are, based on risks that we identify with our clients. And kind of the historic perspective has been, well, if there's a risk or if someone needs supervision, then that means staffing. And so moving away from that model, or moving away from feeling like every single risk needs, careful visual supervision, 24 hours a day, things like that, we felt like that needed some guidance for team members, because you kind of feel like, especially as the guardian, but really as all team members, that if you make the wrong decision, which is just any decision that seems reasonable, and then later something goes wrong, that then you're the one to blame. And, the court's going to look at that and say, why did you make that decision? And so we felt like having some guidance, having some resources that people could refer to would be really helpful for teams as they're addressing these situations, and then would have the impact of reducing what may be some unnecessary staffing, or kind of the flip side is increasing people's comfort with using technology or other new solutions that are developed. So we have put together, it's a real short toolkit. It's a 7 or 8 pages of kind of narrative text with some guidance, but then also some separate resources, checklists that people can refer to, flow charts, different things that we think, a team member could sit down and kind of walk through on their own or people could do together as they're addressing these situations. So we really think that it's going to be helpful. And next week is when we plan to launch this toolkit. We have one of our APSE institutes on Tuesday. And so it's addressing these kind of related issues of risk, identifying and evaluating risk, identifying then the services and supports that are necessary to address those risks, how you take technology into account, and then some situations that we feel like come up pretty often. Things like once the services are working, maybe you've got someone who's on pretty intensive services, like 2-to-1 staffing. How do you know when it's the right time to make changes? And then things like we tend to have clients who we've consented to a plan, but they are refusing services. And so what do you do about that? Do you still have the staff go? Do you say, okay, then we're not going to provide any services? How do you address those situations? So, and of course, once the toolkit is published, I'll be happy to share that. We'll have kind of a standalone PDF version, but then we want it to also be a living document and set of resources. So it's going to be built into a page on our website where we can, update the resources, have things come in and out as appropriate. So I'll just do maybe a quick screen share and show you some of the things that we have. Again, none of this is 100% final, but we're getting really close. So let's see here. So the format might look a little familiar for those of you who have seen some of the publications that some of our groups did early in the pandemic about trusting the team process. We did one last year about kind of triaging needs. And so it's the same kind of format. We try to be pretty succinct. Like I said, we go through identifying risks. There's some videos that are online about dignity of risk and allowing people or assuming that people will experience some amount of risk, how you tie those risks then to different supports that are appropriate. We have gotten some resources from Josh Young, who does a lot with supported decision making. That would be the happy and safe grid as a way of balancing different options. That we think that some of the charting the life course, especially the life trajectory tool, is very helpful here. And we've also pulled together what we're calling a supervision reference chart, which is ways sometimes supervision levels can tend to be kind of jargony. You know, you just throw out things like 24/7 or visual or eyes on or whatever, but really kind of breaking down what does that mean and how does it tie to what you've identified as the risks. We, of course, want to be looking at technology, so we'll be referencing a lot of DoDD's Technology First resources, some of the things that DD Council has put out there. And then, like I said, some of those specific challenges, and then really kind of documenting some of the questions and the issues that people looked at. So then I can also show you a quick look at some of those resources we've put together. Nope, that's not the right one. My apologies. Okay, here we go. So we've got some checklists, like I said, some kind of flow charts or step-by-steps, that happy and safe grid, the charting the life course materials, really just wanting this to be a useful hands-on resource that people can use as they're making these decisions. So like I said, we'll be doing a half day of presentations at our APSE Institute next week. If you haven't seen our emails about that, shoot me an email and I'd be happy to send that over to you. Registration is open through the end of this week. And then we're also presenting on it at the Opera Conference at the end of this month. And we've been talking with Lisa Combs at OACB about doing maybe an SSA forum. We really want to keep this living as a thing that is out there for people to use, not just something we put out there one time and don't revisit. So like I said, it doesn't say how to support the workforce crisis, but we really think that these are the kinds of decisions that will make a big impact on some of those uses of DSPs and people's time going forward.
Great. Looks like you guys put a lot of work into that. So thank you. Any questions for anyone or any observations anyone has? All right, so that'll be up on your website starting next week. Sounds
Yes.
like. Okay, excellent. And I'll make sure in the notes that we have that link.
Thanks, Jackie.
Great. So the next thing we have on our agenda today, Clay and Jill from the department are going to give us an update on the DSP wage compensation survey.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so we do a survey annually called the DSP Compensation Verification Survey, which gives us workforce highlights about our DSP workforce. In the background, this came about after we had a state budget increase for the homemaker personal care services in the reimbursement rates that was authorized for this current biennial budget. So we are looking to measure the impact of that rate increase, as well as just helping us better understand the DSP workforce, in this case during calendar year 2021. We developed the survey with several people on the call today, but it was a collaboration with DoD agency staff and stakeholders representing families, providers, and county boards of developmental disabilities. So the survey in 2021, the eligible population was any provider that billed for HPC services. So that was 1,384 agency provider, I should say. Of those, 84% or 1,165 completed at least one section of the survey. And that represents approximately just over 40,000 DSP positions. And you can see the breakdown based on agency size. And then as we go through the survey, you'll see there's different numbers of responses for each item, you know, kind of depending on if there were missing questions or any data quality issues. So the first is a look at vacancy and tenure rates. So this chart shows the vacancy rates for full and part-time DSPs since 2018. In 2018 and 2019, we did a survey called the Staff Stability Survey, which was done by the National Core Indicators. And then we switched to our own survey in 20 and 21. But you can see the trend clearly indicates through 2020, last year's survey, increasing vacancy rates. And then for part-time people, the vacancy rates this year came down a bit, but they continued to increase for our full-time DSPs. Looking at turnover rates, since 2018, our turnover rates has been about 50% annually. This year's survey revealed that it was 56%, so an increase. We are just about in line with national estimates. And most DSPs are leaving voluntarily. It was 71% this year, which was an increase of 3 percentage points over last year's survey. This is looking at tenure. I'm sorry, this is looking at the percentage of people who left during calendar year 2021. And you can see the majority of DSPs that leave do so within the first year. So that's about 69%. And then out of those, the majority leave within the first 3 months. And this is something that we hear from the field that people are kind of, going through the training and then maybe not staying, with the agency, and they're leaving quickly. And this is definitely something that we could see in the data. This is looking at tenure. So this is at a point in time. So we asked the tenure of DSPs that were employed as of December 31st, 2021. So about 62% of DSPs had been employed for at least a year. But again, you can see there's a lot of turnover. About 10% of employees were less than 3 months, so fairly new. Another 10% between 4 and 6 months. And then 13% less than a year. So looking at all of those data points combined with the fact that this shows about a third of Ohio's DSPs have tenure of less than a year, we can assume that this will lead to increased staffing related costs. And this means everything from recruiting to training to staff overtime. Maybe you're having to advertise more to get people into the positions. But lots of costs related to this kind of churn and turnover that we are seeing in our workforce. And these costs are difficult to sustain by the community providers that are already significantly understaffed. Now getting to compensation, wages, and benefits. In the survey, we asked about several different types of benefits. In this presentation, I'm just going to show the insurance, but we also ask about paid time off, holiday pay, other types of like employee assistance and things like that. But the majority of our providers do offer insurance. In this case, it's health, disability, dental, and life insurance, any one of those. And then you can see in this bottom portion of the chart who is offered the benefit. So the orange bar is full-time, and the blue represents both full and part-time. So you can see in this case, mostly full-time people are offered this type of benefit. On some of the other types of benefits, there are more that are offered to both full and part-time. Is there a question?
This is Teresa. I have a question about this slide. So I think you said that the majority of providers offer some kind of insurance, but when I'm looking at this, the majority of large do not, the majority of medium do not, the majority of small do not, the majority of extra large do. So are the majority of our providers extra large providers? Like, I almost feel like I need a pie chart that shows me this same makeup of our whole provider system to know that
the majority offers some type of benefits. In this case, we're just looking at insurance. Like I said, there's in the survey, there's several other benefits that we ask about. But yeah, the extra large, and that is defined as billing reimbursement of at least 3 million or more. That represents over 50% of the DSPs employed in the state, at least according to our survey. So,
Gotcha.
so yeah, it is. They are the majority of agency employers in the state.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay, this is looking at compensation. Oops, let me pick up here. So there's two sections of compensation. This one is looking at hourly wages, different types of hourly wages. We did some comparisons to last year's survey. So this shows the average starting wage, no matter how the providers reported their services delivered by the DSPs of $12.10, and the median is $12. And that represents an increase of about 89 cents per hour overall over last year's surveys, and 80 cents per hour for providers reporting wages for HPC services only. So that's a pretty big increase over last year. Regular wages per hour for all, no matter what services this year, were $13.72, which is an increase of 76 cents per hour from 2020. And then that is compared to the reimbursement rate base direct care component, which is $13.23 for this year. So we can kind of see as that base rate for reimbursement goes up, so does the average regular wage, and overtime increased also. This is looking at the total compensation per hour. So that includes not only the wages, but also any costs for overtime, any bonuses, fringe benefits, workers' compensation, payroll taxes, training wages, paid time off, or other compensation. So looking at all that together, the average was $18.96 per hour, which was an increase of 79 cents over 2020. So again, we saw an increase in those, in that total compensation for our DSPs over 2020. So our plan for public release, if you guys have questions or feedback, we're happy to take it. This is still draft at this point, but we plan to publish the DSP compensation survey summary report on our website. And then we also have data visualizations that kind of go a little bit more into some of the other questions I didn't highlight today. And we will make that available through the Data Ohio website. So I will pause there for questions.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I think every year it's getting better at measuring the important things. So I commend us all, specifically you, for the survey. If you could, I do have one comment I'm curious about up on maybe slide 3, 4, 5, 6. Talks about the vacancy, or was early about the employees.
This one?
Right there. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, one of the things I want us all to take with a grain of salt is percentages are great for directional purposes, but we also have to remember the denominator matters. And so the one factor I think might be missing from here is the fact that we have less total jobs. So as an example, if the vacancy rate for full-time is 13% in 2018, but we had, I'm going to make up a number, it's 13% of 10,000, but the vacancy rate in 2021 went up to 19, it could be that it's 19% of 5,000, which is actually a huge dramatic decrease in workforce, because agencies and providers have either closed or gotten smaller. So the number of open positions they have might have actually remained the same. And I'll give you an example. If you got a 700 employee provider with 70 openings, that's 10%. If that same provider now is 400 employees with 40 openings, it's still 10%. Problem is, you've got 360 employees compared to when you had 660 before. The percentage won't tell you the actual detriment to the workforce. And I think as we continue to refine this every year, the percentages aren't telling the story. It's the total number, the denominator that matters. So as organizations have become forced to consolidate and get smaller and get thinner and get more efficient because the employees aren't there, their percentage of openings have almost stayed the same. They're just employing half the people. And that's the message that actually gets lost in this, is we have a significant, like exponential amount of less DSPs. And this graph doesn't necessarily point it out. It's factually, statistically true, but it's not telling the story. And Teresa, bring it home.
The funny thing is, he wants nothing to do with me until I sit right here, and all of a sudden, like, needs the attention. And I'm talking about the cat, Jason.
The nice thing about doing the survey again in 2022 is we will hopefully have enough data that we will actually be able to look at the counts. One of the things we could do for this population of providers was compare numbers of people served from 2020 to 2021. And that did go down a little bit, but Jason, to your point, maybe there's fewer workers serving the same number of clients. We just don't know yet from the data we have. But once we do the survey again, and we'll have two, more complete years of data, we'll be able to look at that. Yeah.
Gary wanted in, he had a question.
Yeah, mine's on the next slide, where it says 71% of the DSPs left voluntarily. What strikes me is 29% were told to leave from a safe, from an advocate point of view. If almost 30% of our direct care staff that left were fired, that's what stuck out to me as much as the 71%. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've never worked for an agency that fired that many people.
And I will say that that remainder is a combination of don't know or terminated.
Okay.
Yeah, so the terminated number is under 10%. The don't know, and the don't know, sometimes there'll be a comment for the don't know field, and it's usually like, the person just stopped showing up, or, they really just don't know why the person left.
So does this include the people that are hired but never show up for work? Because we're hearing that a lot, that they've gone through the employment process, but the day they're supposed to work for, I didn't fill out the survey, someone else did, but I'd be interested in knowing, just who never even showed up. Okay, thanks.
I mean, maybe we could add, a category next year of didn't work or something, because we're trying to capture that in the less than 3 months, but you're right, that's a different issue.
Yeah, well, I hear from agencies that you're employed, now you're trained, and now you find out what their job is really all about. No, thank you. And agencies have invested time into training and the employment, and I'm not showing up because I really didn't know what this job was about.
And I think that's reflective in our 3-month, our 90-day survival. It's always been difficult. But I think it's been exacerbated by the fact that even people who want to work in our cause and our mission, they are qualified now to make so much more than they were qualified for in 2017, 18, and 19. If you can cut grass for 25 an hour, you're going to do it. Now, you may try to do this thinking you want to do this for 13 or 14 because it'll mean more, but you have to do something else for 15 before the pandemic. And I think that 3 month, it's a lot. And so our incentives that we think about, through whether it be the county board 6.5% or whatever, if we can focus in on that first 3 months, because it's happening, Gary, you're not wrong. When they see the reality of it, they start and leave. And it doesn't, realistic job previews are tough.
Teresa wanted in.
Jill, I just wondered if you could go to the slide. I think it's about 3 forward from there, that had that 80 cents an hour and how that changed over time. Yep. I just couldn't do the math fast enough to see. Yeah, this is one thing I was curious about, Jason, just because I know you've mentioned several times, and I think some Opera and others, this idea of not only kind of incentivizing people to stay in the first 3 months or year, but also rewarding the people that have stayed. And this is, I guess, just a note for consideration. It looks like that average regular wage only went up 20 cents compared to well, now it doesn't look like it. However you calculated the 89 cents.
That's a split between how the providers reported. It's not last year versus this year. So some providers can report for HPC services only. And then
Gotcha.
some providers report because, their employees are doing multiple things, so they report with other services included.
So this whole chart together represents the 89 cents. I guess that's what I'm curious about, is if it went
this is
up
all just
89 cents.
This is all just 2021. So
Yeah,
there's
how
another
that compares.
Yeah.
Just again, getting at longevity and whether we're rewarding longevity at all.
Any other? Oh, Renee has her hand up.
Yes, I'm interested in a couple of things that really struck out. When you include the compensation, it goes up to $17 an hour. I think it was something like that. So if the reimbursement rate for Medicaid, does it cover that, or how does it affect it?
This is the reimbursement rate. It did go up from last year. I'm not sure of the amount. Clay might know how much it was last year.
For which thing are we talking about? So that graph shows the DSP compensation component plus the benefit percentage that goes to it. So that's the 1323 from the previous slide plus, I believe, 32% on top of that is where that 1720 comes from to add it together. So if the question was that we're showing this $17, but the reimbursement rate doesn't cover that, which I think was the question, that $17, that would be correct in the sense of the DSP compensation, like base wage, hourly rate, as we talk about it, it was 1323, I think, in 21. And then that additional dollar amount there is what the rate model compensates for providing benefits and that such. Of course, like with any reimbursement model, as I know we've talked about ad nauseum, that doesn't mean that's what it reflects out there because of the realities of what's going on, which I think the survey does show. So I hope that was responsive. If that wasn't the question, or if I went off the wrong road, I'd be glad to recorrect.
It's just confusing that Medicaid will compensate for benefits. Now, what about the agency who don't provide benefits and they're only paying 13.23 or whatever it is an hour? That is just really mystifying to me.
Yeah, I definitely understand, especially, think the way these rate models work obviously, and I'm sure all the providers on here and well, probably all of you can we could probably spend 20 hours on here telling us why these rate models don't reflect what really goes on out in the field and how providers have to make it work because of the crude instrument that is a fixed rate reimbursement model that you have no ability to know, will it increase, will it won't, what will it be? So I completely appreciate and understand why it's very confusing and why it's hard for us to look at these rate models and then compare to what we know is going on in terms of compensation. So I think what the benefit, at least in my opinion, of these surveys and ones we've done, I think it really helps shine a light on those things and can help us as a group, not just DODD, of course, but all of us, to help figure out how we actually move the needle on exactly what you're talking about. How do we make sure that our rate models or whatever compensation looks like makes sense, but also is enough to recruit the right number of staff, to pay people appropriately and that kind of stuff, which is really what we're trying to get with this surveys to help us get information to do that.
And the second question, if you don't mind, I think there's about 10% of the 30% of the people who didn't leave voluntarily were terminated. I would like to know the reasons why they were terminated, because it might help us to understand what is going on with workers. It would give us a better idea of the incompetent or, what's really going on that they were terminated. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I mean, I'm not saying they don't deserve to be terminated. That's not my point. My point was maybe we can understand how they're looking and how to avoid that.
Good point. Thank you. I think Gary had his hand up. I don't know if your question was answered or if you still have a comment, Gary.
It's just one more. When we're all on so many groups, I don't remember where this came up, but there was at least one outlier agency that was paying starting in the high teens, and there had been some discussion about not including them in the average. Do you know, Clay, if we did? And my question is that because if the average wage is $12.10, that one provider that was starting at maybe $18 an hour really affects the average because they're a very large or an extra large agency.
Well, I think that's why they included the median, which I appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, and the median is a much better statistical data point when you have an outlier that's low or high. So
right, yeah, I'm
whether
just
included or not.
Yeah, like Jason said, and I think Joe was about to say the same thing. The fact that the median and the average are hovering around the same hemisphere at least tells us that the outliers that were removed that I think are in the notes aren't skewing the data in any significant way. Just like Jason and has said, and I think we may have talked about it in some other meetings.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That helps.
All right. Any other comments, questions, final thoughts on the wage survey, compensation survey? Thank you for putting that together, and for anyone on the call who was one of the people who helped develop the survey data itself, thank you to you as well. It's very insightful. I need to also loop back on the agenda. Another direct support professional piece of work going on right now is getting ready for some roundtables, and Bethany is going to bring us up to speed on that effort.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. So OEDSP is in the early process of scheduling a series of roundtables throughout the state. we are looking at hosting 2 sessions in each region. So while there will be 6 days that we will be hosting the roundtables, we'll have an AM session and a PM session. We're actually working with Jackie on the structure of those. And I guess what I would like to ask from everyone on this call is to just help us push out the dates and the registration once we have that opened. We're looking at hopefully having all of those scheduled and being able to open up registrations for those next week. Where Jackie and I spoke yesterday, and we are really, really trying to get these in before the end of the year. If we need to go further, we will. But this is a great opportunity to bring DSPs together and gather information and formulate reports that can inform groups like this and others. Oh, Jackie, you're on mute.
Any other thoughts? Otherwise, you'll probably be hearing next week about some dates and times and maybe a flyer that you can push out. Good. Bethany, thanks for leading that effort. Next, Jeremiah is going to talk to us about the direct care PSA.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So just to provide a quick recap of where we've been and where we're at. So the campaign did launch in late July, with most things launching in early August. Hopefully you've seen those out and about and on mobile devices. So that went again through cable, broadcast TV, streaming services, YouTube, radio, social media, digital billboards, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple, but a pretty broad spectrum of places that people might view those sort of things. And so the most are still running. I believe all of them are at least running through mid-October. And at that point, we're going to reassess sort of where we're at, and if whether we're going to continue or take a pause and then pick it back up. Some of the other agencies have kicked in some funding. So originally this was supposed to end in September, but we've extended it a month and then now a little bit more. So there's a possibility that we'll continue to do that. So we're also on the website. I did want to point out, so currently, you go to Ohio Means Jobs /direct care. And today there's a very brief introduction on what direct care might look like in Ohio. And then there's a link for each agency. So currently today, that link takes you to search results that populate direct care positions. We're having discussions and would love, separate from this, if you've had experience with the PSA or with posting jobs, would love to hear some of that feedback. But we're exploring whether we would like to put more content on that first page to provide people a little bit more information on what these types of jobs could look like. I think one of the two options that we're sort of pursuing is whether, so today, again, you click on the DODD and it just takes you to the search result. But instead, could that click take you to a resource page that would have DD specific content about what a DSP is? So we could market the position a little bit more before people get to the search results. So we're looking at that. We are cognizant of not trying to have people click too much to get to actual job listings. But on the front end, if we can market the position, again, the PSAs are very broad to direct care in general across the state and very short. And so what is the long-term longevity of the program and what can we post on that page? Also looking alternatively, if, DODD on our webpage, we do have some DSP resources today, but whether we would have a landing page on our site that would host those marketing materials and things that we produce in the future, and then drive to the direct care page. So we're having conversations on that. And then also Ohio Means Jobs is pulling data. The data at this point is pretty early, but we can see things like impressions, how many times things have been viewed, how many times links have been clicked on. But we would love to get to a future state where we can drill down to the provider level and provide employer data to employers on how many people were driven to their page, how many people have clicked, and where they've come from. And I have heard some providers have reached out about difficulties that they've had past experience with Ohio Means Jobs and Monster. I just want to make that offer. If there are things that you're experiencing or improvements that you think could be made to that platform, that we certainly want to listen to those. So please reach out to me on those. I did forget to mention, just lastly, the PSA and all the assets that came along with it are being translated into Spanish. And so those will be available and posted soon. That's a common request that we got. So again, if you have other suggestions or input, either on the content side or the posting and receiving application side, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Jeremiah? Thank you, Jeremiah. Steve is now going to give us an update on the state agency working group.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, as most of you know, there's a cross-agency working group on direct care. It was originally brought together basically for brainstorming purposes with the state agencies, a lot of our sister agencies from JFS, Workforce Transformation, Higher Ed was a part of it, Health, Medicaid, all the agencies that you can think of that would have a hand in or regulate any type of direct care services in Ohio. What we ended up doing is sending out a survey to get information back on specific topics, specific to rules, regulations, education and training, scope of practice, employment wellness, and ways to leverage technology and innovation. And through that survey process, we then invited some folks to give public testimony. And through that process, we had 5 days of testimony, each day dedicated to each of those topics. We compiled all of that testimony. We have all the recordings and all the testimonies available on the website, and I'll post that in the chat, and we'll send that out as part of the follow-up to this as well. After that, we gathered together a group of stakeholders, both state agency representatives and external stakeholders. So I see, many folks that are on this call were also a part of that group as well. Through that process, we came up through the testimony that was given and through the group that met, we came up with explorations that the group discussed, edited. We did a lot of back and forth via, a spreadsheet and meetings. And right now it's in the final stages of, being edited and put together into a report that will be published by ODJFS. So that is still in the works, but the overall, I think, purpose and what the outcome of the group will be are these explorations that are cross-agency, that they are not specific to one specific working group. It is across all agencies and what agencies should be thinking about when either developing budget items, initiatives, programs, projects, that this will kind of be a blueprint to go back to and look at whenever those things are being talked about. So like I said, that's in the process of being put together by JFS, and we hope will be out pretty soon. But I was wondering if anybody that is here today that was also a part of that group. I know Nate was a part of it. I'm looking, I think Gary, you were a part of it. Looking for faces here. But if you guys had anything to say about either the process or the group, Bethany, I know you were on it as well.
I don't know. I saw it was a duplication of effort. We've been working on this group for what, year and a half now. In all honesty, I didn't find it very worthwhile.
Okay, thanks.
I was also on that group. And I echo what Jerry said.
And I just along with the two of them, I would echo some of their responses. I mean, I would say there's value in coming together, but I don't know that as a group we had a real focus or a direction. So I don't know if that's kind of still coming together. I know that the group's goal is to make a final report. And I don't know what the progress of that report is. And I know that Mr. Field has had some changes in his personal life and that sort of thing. So I guess I was hoping, Steve, that you would give us an update on where the progress of the final report is, because it's been a while since we've met.
Yeah, I know they're finishing it up right now. You're right. John was out for a bit with a new addition to his family, so that put a little bit of a pause on some of the work. But yeah, it's definitely in the final stages, Nate.
I mean, and I'll echo what Nate said. I am looking forward to that final report, and I did appreciate being able to hear from the various agencies, and I think it helped us compare and contrast a little more.
Thanks. I appreciate those perspectives. I will say from a state agency perspective, I guess I was hopeful that it would be helpful to everybody, but from our perspective, hearing the testimonies and hearing all the different perspectives and trying to put those together in one document really, I guess, highlighted how much we do say that we're all different in many different ways, and we definitely are, but there are definitely common areas that we could work on together to make things a little bit easier for everyone. And so just from my perspective, hearing that input from multiple different perspectives and audiences really drove that home. And to me, that document is going to be really helpful as we, move things forward to make sure that we are including other state agencies in those discussions across those explorations. So I appreciate the perspectives from this group as well. Unless there's any questions about it, I'll turn it back over to Jackie. Renee, it looks like.
I would, sorry, go.
I just wanted to clarify that I think it was good to have everybody come together. It wasn't that I was just expecting something different out there. I was expecting more of a organized plan on how to affect this question across all the departments. And I was expecting goals and objectives to come out of it, such as the labor department would handle this part, Therefore, I expect more of an organized overall umbrella goal across agency. And that's what I mean, departments. So therefore, I was a little disappointed. I hope that clarifies it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Renee. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Our partners at the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services have also been doing some focused work on some of the workforce issues. And we are lucky today that Zendaya Lawson, who is the chief of the Bureau of Recovery Supports, is here to share that with us. So the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for having me today. I'm going to have to go off camera. It keeps telling me my internet is unstable, and it's been working a little bit better today when I'm off camera, but I did want to come on camera and say hi to everyone. Many of you I know, some of you I don't, so it's good to see everyone. And again, thank you for letting us come today and talk a little bit about our workforce efforts and strategies. So if you all attended the Director Summit earlier this year, you may have heard this or have heard our director speak recently. We are really focused on, like many of you all are, on our workforce and ensuring that the individuals that we serve and support have access to good and quality care. So like Jackie mentioned, I am Zandaya Lawson, and I'm the Bureau Chief for Recovery Supports here at the department. And recovery supports includes peer support, supported employment, housing and homeless, and community transitions. So today I want to talk to you all a little bit about the work that we're doing at the department to address behavioral health workforce needs. Just some quick facts about 2.5 million people in Ohio live in communities that don't have enough behavioral health professionals. 21% live with a mental health condition or substance use disorder. And we know that on average, between onset of symptoms and when people get treatment, that is about 11 years. And that's something that we want to address and change. Also, we know that the demand for behavioral health has increased over 350%, and our workforce just haven't kept pace with that growth and need. We commissioned a study a couple of years ago, and these were pre-pandemic figures. We are refreshing the data to see kind of where we are and where we stand. So we know that we need to address the needs as it relates to behavioral health. So next slide. So one of the things that we did at the department about maybe a little bit more than a year ago, or maybe a little bit less than a year ago, is that we convened an internal workforce group, a workforce committee, and the committee is made up of a cross-section of department staff, and we come together and think about and plan behavioral health workforce needs. We developed, as you'll see on the screen, what we're calling wellness workforce priority pillars. And those pillars include increasing career awareness, supporting recruitment, incentivizing retention, and supporting contemporary practice. So next slide, please. So within these pillars, you'll see over the course of the next 4 slides, kind of doing a deep dive into those areas that I mentioned earlier. In terms of increasing career awareness, our goal really is to educate Ohioans about our profession and then about the pathways within that profession. We are right now contracting with an organization to help us better understand what are the perceptions as it relates to behavioral health careers and pathways. That work is going to be getting underway within the next couple of weeks. We want to understand, what do people think about individuals who work in behavioral health and behavioral health in general. So we're really, really excited about that. This is kind of phase 1 of just a larger project that we're hoping to do. I think it was mentioned earlier on the call about the joint effort we did with the public services announcements around direct service professionals. We really want to build on that and expand on that. And so more is to come about that. And we want to ensure that we have effective and compelling awareness campaigns that really drive interest in behavioral health careers. And that's with middle schoolers, high schoolers, early college, people who are mid-career changers. So we really want to have focused campaigns on the various populations. And I think it was Steve earlier that talked about us, partnering with Job and Family Services and just really using them as a tool as people are seeking careers in behavioral health. So the next slide really focuses on incentivizing retention. We know that there is turnover in the workforce, but we know that people stay. We know that about 60% of the workforce is retained in behavioral health. And so we really want to think about and find out, what do people do why do people stay? I think about that for myself too, having been in behavioral health for a couple of decades, really thinking about why do people stay and what do we need to do to continue to support people as they stay and move through their careers in behavioral health. So we have done a few incentives. There's been service-based retention bonuses, loan repayment and tuition reimbursement, and then specifically for psychiatric residency, more medical professional training. Our goal is to, again, educate and support individuals and employers as they kind of work through and stay within behavioral health. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about some of the other things that we are doing around retention. And one of the things I wanted to mention, I don't know if it's in the slide deck or not, but really one of the things as we were kind of working through this work, we realized that both recruitment incentives and retention incentives are often parallel, right? The things that we do to attract people to our profession is very similar to those things that we need to do to retain them. And so I'll chat a little bit more about that kind of toward the end. And then the fourth pillar is really around supporting contemporary practice, ensuring that our workforce is up to date on best practices and that we have making accessible to them training on best practices, training on evidence-based practices, things like research to practice, and that people have and individuals have access to that, but then also that individuals have access to good supervision and quality supervision. And so those are the four pillars that we're working on. Next slide. They're supporting recruitment. It was a little bit out of order. So supporting recruitment, I'm going to talk about in a little bit of detail on the next slide, a partnership that the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services has with the Ohio Department of Higher Education and the Ohio Department of Medicaid. We want to offer career opportunities to people who are in their last 1 to 2 years of college, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year degree, and kind of help get them over the finish line. And if you go to the next slide, Steve, there should be some details about this. So you may have seen back in May, I think it was May 13th, the governor and some partners had a press conference to talk about this initiative. We don't have a name for it yet, but we're working on a name for it right now. We're calling it the $85 million initiative. But this initiative really seeks to grow our workforce, the behavioral health workforce, pretty quickly. And it really is focused on disciplines that will support behavioral health professions. So we're looking at Ohio's 2- and 4-year colleges and universities. We really want to focus on those students who are in their last 1 to 2 years of their schooling, and we want to help get them over the finish line. So these funds can, it's up to $10,000 while students are still in school, and $5,000 once they graduate. But these funds are really targeted to paid internships and stipends for students. It could pay for things such as helping students prepare for licensure certification examinations and the examination themselves. So most of the 85 million is really focused on, or will be going toward, the student and the student's education and really associated costs to get them over the finish line. Another part of that funding package includes, once the student has graduated, a sign-on bonus with a behavioral health organization. And then there's also some retention bonuses built into years 1 and 2 following that. Another part of the $85 million package is really funding that's going to be going to provider organizations to support the effort of having students and ensuring students get a quality opportunity, a quality internship. We heard from providers that oftentimes it's difficult for them to offer supervision. And so we really want to provide some relief to providers, or some opportunity or funding to providers to be able to provide the supervision and the quality that students need in their internship. The third element of the $85 million funding is the department is going to stand up what we're calling a behavioral health workforce technical assistance center. And really the goal of that center is going to be to support our behavioral health employers and our behavioral health providers kind of work through those 4 pillars that we talked about, and really provide direct support to our provider organizations. And then lastly, there is a bucket of funding within this package to provide sign-on and retention bonuses to people who may have left the field but are interested in coming back. During the pandemic, we heard that some people left behavioral health altogether but have a desire to come back. And so we're hoping that that could be an incentive for people to return to the behavioral health workforce. So currently, we've received these dollars are part of the Home and Community-Based Services ARPA dollars that the Department of Medicaid received. We have received approval from CMS for our plan. And right now, the plan is a part of Senate Bill 357. And so it's working its way through the legislative process for state spending authority. Next slide. So, our goal is that, every Ohioan should see themselves in the behavioral health workforce. We want to ensure that people feel welcome and comfortable in seeking services within our system. So we want to ensure that our system is diverse and inclusive across our entire workforce. So that certainly is a focus of the work that we're going to be doing. Next slide. So one of the things that I wanted to mention, I think I had said earlier that we will be contracting, or maybe I didn't say it, but we're going to be contracting, we're in contract negotiations now with a consultant to really help the department and our system build a roadmap to really address some of the workforce issues that we have all experienced. And so we're going to, as a part of that work, we're going to convene we're calling it a behavioral health workforce council that will be a part of the work and helping us to develop some long-term solutions. There's been some short-term infusions of funding and dollars, and we're really focus on kind of those long-term solutions and kind of paving that road as we go down it. And so we will be assembling that group in the future. But in the meantime, we've been really listening and brainstorming with our provider organizations as well as other stakeholders. And some of the recommendations you'll see on the screen are things that are infused already in the work that we're doing. We had a recent session with provider organizations, and one of the top things that really stood out to us and that all providers really talked to us about is training for supervisors and staff, that there would be some standard and some standing training that the state could institutionalize and that we could support. So that was really the thing that kind of rose to the top. Of course, reimbursement rates and pay has been a part of those conversations, and I know that those conversations are continuing to happen, and I know that work is happening in that space. But as we've gotten with providers and really talked to providers about problem solving, we've talked about things outside of reimbursement rates. And again, we know that's very important, but what are some of those other things that they find that would be helpful as they work to recruit and retain staff? Certainly paid internships came out of those discussions, which is why it's really a part of the work that we're doing in the $85 million package. Partnerships came up a lot, provider organizations working more collaboratively together, and rather than duplicating services, see how they can work together to complement services. Benefits for staff came up. Providers really talked about wanting to offer benefits to their staff and look at things that are kind of outside of the box and not just your standard benefits, dental and health insurance, but things like a health insurance, a membership to a health club, on-site yoga, just thinking differently about the different populations and the different needs of the workforce, and really trying to think more broadly about some of the benefits that could be offered to staff. So that came up a lot. The Technical Assistance Center, this was a specific request that the department is moving forward with, again, having a technical assistance center that really supports our behavioral health workforce needs. So that was something that came out of the recommendations that the department is going to stand up. Another recommendation was retention funding, that there would be some funding and support for retention. That's just stabilized funding, long-term funding, something that really supports the longevity of the individuals who stay in our workforce. Tuition reimbursement was something that has come up, and I know it's something that the department has supported. And then funding for support for supervision. And again, this is a part of that $85 million package that we've talked about. So we'll continue to hold sessions with providers and hear back from them and implement what we can. We're looking forward to working with our contractor, though, really to build a roadmap, right? A strategic plan around what are we going to do. And as a part of the RFP, the vendor will be helping us, the contractor will be helping us not only develop an actionable roadmap, but also to implement that. So more to come. So once the contract is finalized and we get moving, I'll probably come back to this group and let you know kind of the details and what we're working on, and really get some input or some ideas. I know that there are some things that are parallel, that runs parallel in our systems, and really thinking about maybe how we can work together and support each other and share ideas. But we definitely want to be your partners in this. We're all in this together, certainly, but however we can support one another and share information, we definitely want to do that. I don't think that there are any other slides, Steve. I think that that's the end of the presentation. So are there any questions? We are really, as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of paving the road, as we go along. We are, certainly feel like we're in, in uncharted territory, but we are, learning from our other state partners and our behavioral health community and our behavioral health partners. So we're learning, and most importantly, we're listening, and we're taking action when we can. There are some short-term things we can do, but we are certainly also focused on the long term.
Thank you so much for all that information. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I thought there was some good stuff there. We might need to soak on it a little bit. Are you comfortable with sending your PowerPoint to Steve so that the group can look at it more in depth?
Absolutely. Steve has the PowerPoint. And then also too, I'll just put a link in the chat with our website that has some really good, data and information. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of rich data, and that's why we're really excited to work with a contractor, with a consultant, to help us figure out. We have all this great data, this rich data. We know about the workforce. We know about the people that we serve and support, and just kind of bringing that together and figuring out how do we best use this information and the data that we have.
We do have a question in the chat. So the question is, so since these are retention bonus payments, will the employee be taxed at a higher rate than their regular pay? And if so, do you know what that would be?
That is a great idea that I don't know the question to. I don't know if someone on the phone who has a better knowledge about that than I do, because I know that there were retention bonuses all around. That's a really good question. I would venture to say they would be, but that's not something that I am comfortable with answering.
Fair enough.
Maybe someone on the phone knows.
I don't think anyone wants to play tax attorney right now from the looks on Facebook.
Exactly. That's probably smart, Jackie.
Stay in our lane, right?
That's probably really, really smart.
But a good question for policymakers. When we think about some of these things, sometimes we forget that it doesn't always play out the way you think it's going to play out.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. I was talking to a CEO from another behavioral health organization who's thought long and hard about that. And so I do think that there are some strategic ways that we can think about that and maybe plan for that in the future. So whomever brought that up, thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you making the time to come chat with our group, and we wish you nothing but good luck, because anything you implement that works, we will probably all steal shamelessly.
Well, I was going to say the same, right? Like, so if we can stay connected and we want to be inspired by your ideas and plagiarize them, so by all means, definitely.
Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, I'm going to jump to our last agenda item. You have the updated proposal review report from Steve. That's something we've also kind of seen different versions of in the past, and you have that if you want to look at that. We wanted to raise the question about the cadence and how does this team want to move forward. You'll remember we started working together in May of 21. We've had about 18 months where we fielded proposals that we thought were going to have impact on workforce recruitment and retention, and ideas that we thought would support DSPs as being a really worthy and positive career. So along the road, we've had a lot of different proposals around rules and practices and training and funding and marketing. And we also know that a lot of you have collaborated together on the side on other ideas and legislative requests. So the last time we were together, the group's consensus was to move to quarterly meetings. And if we maintain that schedule, we would next meet in January. Since then, different members have brought up that perhaps the quarterly forums make sense. Perhaps it's time to just flat out move to ad hoc when there's something warranted to pull together. Or perhaps it's time to discontinue as everyone moves into different positions for the biennial budget and other work efforts. So wanted to throw it open to those of you who are still on the phone, your thoughts about if this should continue, and if it should continue, what do you think is the appropriate cadence?
Jackie, this is Teresa. Can we wait until after the second week in November to make that decision?
I think so. I mean, we're literally just asking the question. I don't know that it has to be decided today.
Yeah, and I'm only saying that because, well, I think a lot of people assume we know the results of the election. We have been surprised in Ohio before. And so I just wonder if anything major were to change, we would want to have, and maybe that's the ad hoc answer. Maybe I'm saying my answer is ad hoc, but I just think that
So don't go so far as
our approach.
Yeah, so don't go so far as to disband right now is what I hear you saying. And I see people nodding. These people I can see on camera. Yep. Okay. All right. Does anyone else have a different opinion or want to offer a different perspective? Nate, looks like your hand's up.
I think my thought is maybe we schedule quarterly so that it's on our calendars and then we have the ad hoc in the back of our mind in case something comes up.
All right. Any other opinions? All right, so we'll keep the January meeting on the agenda for now, and we'll see how the world is turning at that point. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. All right. I believe that has worked through our agenda for the day. Let me thank you all for your participation, and let me throw it back to our director for any final thoughts.
I just echo, thanks everybody for being here, and especially thanks to our mental health partner for coming and sharing today what the good work that they're doing. And Steve will definitely, or Jackie will share the slides so we can all take a little bit deeper look at those. We will, I'm not going to say see you in January because I will see all of you way before then, but we'll regroup in January. Thanks, everybody.